You have to tie a scarlet thread, tie it to your window. Now, does that sound familiar to you? A sign made visible on a home, a promise that the coming judgment and the destruction is not going to touch the inhabitants of that home. The specific color, the scarlet, the color of blood that marks the differences between those who receive life and those who receive death. Israel had the Passover in Egypt. Rahab had the Passover in Jericho. This is Rahab's salvation from the deliverer. This is Rahab's moment of salvation. In Egypt, the Israelites were instructed to paint the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, and the angel of death would not destroy them. The spies are thinking, what could we do for her? What if she puts something that looks like blood on the doorpost, and then we won't come for her? In the middle of total destruction, there is a pocket of grace, a household saved by faith, marked by the blood. And that's the way the story of Rahab ends. Except. You could turn your Bibles to Joshua chapter 2. That's where we're going to be this morning. And as you're turning there, I want to begin with an object lesson. What I have here is some labels, and I went ahead and wrote a few of these labels down before service began today, and I want to see if any of the labels fit you. And if the labels fit you, I want to encourage you, if you can, raise your hand, don't be shy. And if it fits, raise your hand, like, let me know that you're there, and then I'm gonna give you one of these labels, and then I want you to put it on your chest, on your shirt. Okay? So here it is. Are you ready? First one. I'm looking for someone in the church who is from the Caribbean. But hold on. Before you, let me tell you what I'm talking about. I'm saying that you like root for the Caribbean teams more than you root for America. And that you like, I don't know, you're a Caribbean. I'm looking for someone like that. Anybody like this? A Caribbean person? Yes. Come. I can't see who that is. Come, yeah, you all the way in the back. I don't know. Hey, yeah. You're perfect. Caribbean man. I'm sorry, I couldn't see who you were back there. You can go back. All right. I'm looking for the next person I'm looking for. This is a person that would prefer to ride cattle than to ride a subway. I'm looking for like a country person. A country, like you're from the country. Do we have any real country? Yes, I like you, Aiden, as a country person. Yes, look at you. Those are like equivalent to cowboy boots. I can feel it. All right, next, I'm looking for a person that is tall, but like you have to like scoot down to go into doors. That's what I'm looking for. Wismar, you were this morning. All right, Oju. Tall man. All right, we're going to go the opposite side of the spectrum. Are you ready? Any short people in the house here today? But you got to be proud of it. You got to think to yourself. All right, yes. I like it. Brittany, both of you. A competition. Perfect. Yeah, wonderful. This is great. We have labels, right? We have labels that some of them are fun and silly, and some of them are whatever. We all wear labels. We have people that go to high school and are on the honor roll. That's a label. We have car enthusiasts. We have coffee snobs. We have people that like pineapple on pizza, and other people that think it's an abomination. But here's the point. We have labels. Some of them are fun, harmless descriptions. Some of the labels we choose for ourselves, things that we're proud of. Other labels we aren't. And the ones then there's labels that other people give us. Sometimes those are the ones that stick. Those often aren't so fun. I got my first label when I was a kid. I was the perfect chaotic combination of daring and clumsy. I like to climb on things, but I would also fall down from things. Meaning my legs and my body was full of scrapes and cuts and bruises. It was so bad that one time my parents got a call from Child Protective Services, assuming that I had been abused by them, but they didn't know that I was abusing myself. And so I got hurt a lot. And so my family started calling me this, boo-boo. To this day, my extended family still calls me this. They'll say, hey, boo-boo, what's up going on? And like, it's a weird thing to call somebody, but that's the label I got. But as I got older, I got more labels. I was in school, and in school, I was a terrible speller. Truthfully, I'm still a bad speller. I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic, but I'm the type of speller that like you would type into like the computer, and it would say, even spell check doesn't know what you're trying to say. You know what I'm saying? Like that bad. So I was good at math, but terrible at spelling. And I remember studying really hard. I told this story before, but I remember studying really hard for a test in 3rd grade. I had done so bad in all the spelling tests, and this time I'm like, I'm gonna do my best. And so I worked at it, and when I got the paper back, you know, like it passes it to you, and I'm looking for the red, you know, because that's what my teacher marked when I did wrong. It's like I'm looking for the red marks, and there's no red marks. And on the top of the piece of paper, the exam, it just says the word no. What's below a 0? A no. That's what I got back. I thought to myself, I aced this test, but I didn't ace it. I got a no. So I got the label as a kid in 3rd grade that I was not smart. Yeah, feel bad. That one hurt. In high school, I got more labels. I was a high school varsity basketball player. I was a pretty good shooter, but I was a timid kid. You know, I was weak, and I remember I was supposed to foul a guy to send him to the line, but I didn't foul him, or I fouled him, but they made a 3-point play or something like that. And my coach was so mad at me. And we got to the end of the game or to the halftime speech, and he's talking, and he's yelling, and he's like foaming at the mouth, and he picks up like a roll of toilet paper, and he throws it at me, and with a bunch of expletives, and he says, you know what you are? You are tissue. And my teammates for the rest of the year, tissue. Labels we carry, right? We have ones that stick with us. You can remember the time where your mom, dad, teacher, parent, something said something to you that stood out to you, that stuck with you. Where you started to believe things about yourself. I'm not attractive. I'm not smart. I'll never be successful. I'm a failure. I'm broken. And once the labels have been peeled off their backing and pressed onto our soul, it's incredibly hard to remove them. It's hard because those labels kind of give you a definition of who you are. And so when we look to our future, all we do is look to the past and the labels that we have worn. I am too old, not educated, too broken, already missed my chance. These are things we carry. And some of them we carry them secretly, some of them we carry openly, but they begin to dictate a little bit about the way we live our lives. And they have a danger, if you really spend a lot of time focusing on them, they have a danger of locking us out of some of the truth that God has for us. They become, in a sense, self-fulfilling prophecies that tell us who we are or what we're capable of or what we believe God can't use us for. They build walls around our potential and often kind of get in the way of what faith is trying to produce in us. And in our story today, in the ministry of God's promise, we're going to look at a woman in the Old Testament who wore one of the most damning labels a person could ever in her culture. We're in Joshua chapter 2, and we're going to talk about a woman who carries a label. Let's see if you know who she is before we even begin. Have you heard of Alexander the? You've heard of that person. How about Attila the? How about Buffy the? And today we're going to talk about Rahab the. Her story is a cornerstone in the architecture of God's promise, a promise that proves that the labels people give us, and even the labels that we give ourselves aren't a limit to God at all. Her life is a bold, encouraging, and convicting example that our past does not determine our future in the kingdom of God. Let's read it together and study it. I have to say, this may be, and I know I say this all the time, but this one I think is true. This may be my favorite story in the Old Testament. So we're going to read it. I hope you love it as much as I do. Let's read it together. Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. Then Joshua, that is the person that comes after Moses, is Moses' successor, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies to Shittim. Be careful how you read that one. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. To understand the story of Rahab, we have to try to understand her world. The book of Joshua opens with the nation of Israel on the brink of entering the promised land. As you might remember, for 40 years, they've been wandering in the desert. We've talked a lot about this. And an entire generation has passed away because of their unbelief and their rejection of God as God. But now a new generation, led by Moses' successor, Joshua, is standing on the banks of the Jordan River, ready to enter into the promised land. They're about to cross into the land promised to Abraham for centuries, that they would be given this land. And so Joshua, as a great military leader, says, I'm going to send some spies into the land. They're going to look out the land, but I want them to especially take some time in the city of Jericho. Jericho is a walled city. Archaeologists have excavated ancient Jericho, and it's actually one of the oldest, if not the oldest, continuously inhabited, fortified cities in the world. It's about 8 acres in size, so it's not that big of a city, but it's surrounded by walls made of mud and made of stone. In the ancient times, it would have been about 10 to 12 feet tall. And in its day, it was a fortress, a symbol of the power of the Canaanites and a symbol of what it would take for Israel to conquer the promised land. It was the gatekeepers to the promised land for the people of Israel. And so Joshua sends 2 spies, says, hey, check out the city, check out this place, make sure like when we go in, we know how we're going to enter into it and win this battle. The text says that they crossed the Jordan, and they went and entered in Jericho a house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The Bible doesn't mince words. It gives her the label right up front. The King James Bible calls her Rahab the harlot. The modern translations use a more direct word. She is Rahab the prostitute. This isn't just her biblical, this isn't just her occupation. It's the biblical identifier. This is the label she carries. She is a person who lives and works in the dark parts of society. She is a person of sin, of impurity, and this is how she's introduced to us in the Bible. The Bible tells her this is her legacy. Her legacy is tied to this label that she is a prostitute. And so the spies come to her house. Commentators give us some reasons why they might have come in. One reason is because a person who was running essentially a brothel would have had a sense of anonymity for the people going in the house. They would have understood how to hide a man in a house like that. But also the Bible tells us that her house was built on the wall. So it would also have been an easy escape for the spies if they were caught. They could jump out of the window and exit the city. The story continues. Somehow, some way, the spies aren't too good at spying, so the king discovers that they're spies and that they've gone to Rahab's house. So it says this, the king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent his messenger to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. The king's messengers come to Rahab's house with the authority of the king. It's, open up, it's the police, that type of vibe. And this woman who has everything to lose here, a woman whose life is likely one of constant vulnerability and exploitation, this woman makes a choice that the Bible describes as an act of faith. The Bible actually specifically describes it as her trust in the God of Israel. And what she decides to do is hide the men. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. Why would she do this? We're going to see in a moment. In her profession, she might have known how to do this. And it was an easy thing for her to figure out how to hide the men, and so she hides them. She says, yes, the men to the officers at the door, yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gates, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You can catch up to them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid on the roof. She lies. She's Rahab, the lying prostitute. She's a sinner. She's a wrongdoer in the most devastating way possible. She looks at the king's soldiers right in the eyes, and she lies to protect the spies of Israel. Well, why does she do this? Verse 7, so the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gates were shut. Before the spies laid down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, she sends these people on a journey across like a wild goose chase. And then what she does is she has a conversation with the spies. Now, some of you know this story. And so familiarity makes it difficult to be amazed by how amazing this story is. But here is Rahab, this woman of the night, whose Israel's own law would have commanded her execution. She's a liar and a harlot, and she makes one of the clearest professions of faith in all of the Old Testament. Verse 8 is the heart of this text, and this is what she says: I know that the Lord has given you this land. I know it. How does she know it? She knows it. And the great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water from the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Her occupation has given her access to some of the most powerful men of Jericho. No doubt men of the king's court have come into her home at night to exploit her and to use her and to abuse her. And no doubt about it, she has heard the grumblings of those officials talking about these people of Israel who came up out of Egypt. And Rahab has learned of Yahweh, has heard the stories of 40 years of the stories of Israel, has heard about the way that they conquered Egypt and the way that God fed them in the wilderness and the way that they destroyed the kings of the Amorites. And she hears the people coming to use her. She hears them talking about those things, and so draws a conclusion. Those people's hearts are melting, but she thinks, maybe that God can save me. For Rahab, the hearing didn't produce fear, the hearing produced faith. So she concludes her speech with these words that if you read them, you could just kind of disregard and think, wow, that's nice, but man, they are so meaningful. The Lord, your God, that's Yahweh, Yahweh, your God, is God in heaven above and on earth below. And you think, well, why is that so important? Well, you have to look at Deuteronomy chapter 4. Because before the law is given a second time to the generation that's about to enter Jericho, Moses has this speech. It's a long speech. I'm going to read the whole thing. He has this speech, and I want you to hear the way it concludes. This is the speech. Ask now about the former days. This is Moses speaking to the people of Israel. Long before your time, from the day God created the human beings on the earth, ask from one end of the heavens to the other, has anything so great as this ever happened? Or has anything like this ever been heard of? Has any other people heard the voice of God speaking out of the fire as you have and lived? Has any God ever tried to take for himself one nation out of another nation by testing, by signs, by wonders, by war, by mighty hands and in outstretched arms, or by great and awesome deeds, like all the things the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your very eyes? You were shown these things so that you might know that the Lord is God. Besides him, there is no other. From heaven, he made you hear his voice to discipline you. On earth, he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words from out of the fire. Because he loved your ancestors and chose their descendants after them, he brought you out of Egypt by his presence and his great strength to drive out before you nations greater and stronger than you, and to bring you into the land to give it to you for your inheritance as it is today. He's setting up the point. He's going, look, has anything so great ever happened as a God selecting a nation out of another nation, pulling them close to himself and deciding that he's going to reveal himself to them? Has anything so great happened? And they're supposed to go, no, this is incredible. And then he gives them a charge. What are you to do then? Acknowledge. I want you to acknowledge and take heart this day that what? The Lord is God in heaven above and on earth below. There is no others. Her words here, Rahab's words, are a stunning echo of the words Moses himself tells the people of Israel to have. He says, when you understand the great things that the Lord has done, you will come to a single conclusion, which is the Lord is the God of heaven and the Lord is the God of the earth below. That's the stunning conclusion you're going to come to, people of Israel. And they all nod their heads, okay. And here is a prostitute coming to the exact same conclusion. Do you understand the weight of this statement? This is an outsider, an immigrant, a prostitute, a pagan living in a city devoted to another god. And here she is articulating a creedal statement of God's own making that is perfectly aligned to the faith that Israel is supposed to have. The generation of Israel who actually saw the Red Sea part didn't come to that conclusion. The generation of Israel who ate manna from heaven didn't come to this conclusion, and they died in their unbelief. And yet this woman who heard stories, probably from men who abused her, believed that God is who he says he is. God's chosen people faltered in their faith while the woman wearing the label prostitute becomes a prophet of God's sovereignty. And here's the point. Her label did not disqualify her from recognizing that there is a true God, from coming to faith. Her past did not prevent her from seeing God's future plans. She looked past the security of the walls of Jericho and past the kings and said, I don't put my trust in any of that. I put my trust in the God of Israel. And in the meantime, she teaches us a powerful lesson, that it's not about where we've been, but about who we believe God to be. And you say, well, hold on, she's a prostitute and a liar. She's in sin. And that's true, You have to, when you come to faith, you start in sin. Isn't that true for all of us? You don't come to faith fully repentant. You start being a sinner. And so she's a sinner. Repentance for her will come, but the first step here is experiencing the will of God. It's faith, not perfect faith, but faith that trusts that God can reach into her past and redeem her. And believing that sinners just like her can understand and acknowledge that God is the God of heaven above and the earth below. And so based on this newfound faith, Rahab makes a bold request. She has saved their lives with her faith, and so she asked that they would return the favor. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family. Kindness to my family. I'll come to this in a second. Because I've shown kindness to you, give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother. In the occupation that she has, does it mean that her father and mother have despised her work? Does it mean that she's an outsider to her mom and dad because of the choices that she has made? How about her brother and sister? And all who belong to them. So she's like, look, I want to save not mom and dad. I want to save mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and kids and their in-laws and their in-laws' kids and anybody else, can you save all of them who are part of my family? Can you save them from death? Her faith immediately becomes a vehicle to rescuing her family. And I could preach just on this exact line, but I feel this, I feel so much about this because it resonates for me with the amazing women we have in this church. The people who I know in this church who found Jesus Christ and then made it their life's goal to save their family. They said, look, I'm going to be a Christian and I'm going to follow Jesus and I'm going to save my family. The prayer of Rahab, it reminds me of this ministry that we have in this church called Sarah's Daughters, where women with non-Christian husbands just pray to be better wives and better reflections of Jesus Christ so that they would save their husbands. That's what this reminds me of. What amazing heroes those women are, who act righteously and godly and go above and beyond to try to show the example of Jesus Christ to their unbelieving spouses in an attempt to save them from the grips of death. Those women are amazing, and I think the faith of Rahab is amazing. The spies agree, but they make two contingencies with this plan. Hey, that's fair, but you're gonna have to do two things. Number one, you're gonna have to make sure that entire family, all those in-laws, all those people, we're not gonna be like, knock, 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 are you Rahab's family? They have to all go in one house. They all need to come to your house. And number two, you have to tie a scarlet thread, tie it to your window. The cord is supposed to be a sign for the Israelite army that as they're invading the city, they'll go into every home except for the home that's covered with the scarlet thread. Now, does that sound familiar to you? A sign made visible on a home, a promise that the coming judgment and the destruction is not going to touch the inhabitants of that home. The specific color, the scarlet, the color of blood that marks the differences between those who receive life and those who receive death. This is a thematic parallel between, what this is the Passover. Israel had the Passover in Egypt. Rahab had the Passover in Jericho. This is Rahab's salvation from the deliverer. This is Rahab's moment of salvation. It's so close, in fact, that many theologians just they don't say it's a parallel, they say this is a type. It's in Egypt, the Israelites were instructed to paint the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, and the angel of death would not destroy them. And here she said, the spies are thinking, what could we do for her? What if she put something that looks like blood on the doorpost, and then we won't come for her? It's incredible. And so Rahab lets them down from the rope, and immediately the text says she ties the scarlet cord on her window. A few days later, Joshua and the Israelites cross the Jordan River, and for 6 days they march around Jericho once a day, and on the seventh day they march around it 7 times. And at Joshua's command, they let out a great shout, and the Bible tells us that the walls come tumbling down. The city is utterly defenseless, and so Israelites' armies go inside, they pour in, and this is what it says in Joshua's instruction as they are entering the city. The city and all that are in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. In the middle of total destruction, there is a pocket of grace, a household saved by faith, marked by the blood. And that's the way the story of Rahab ends. Except we fast forward 1,400 years. You turn to the book of Matthew, and the New Testament begins in actually in a really strange way. The book of Matthew starts with a genealogy, which is a list of names that Jesus comes from. Matthew does it in order to make sure that people understand that he is in the proper lineage to be the king. And so you go through the list and you're just reading it, and this is one of those things that when someone tells you to read Matthew, you go, oh, you just kind of skip to chapter 2. In the ancient days, genealogies are exclusively men. But Matthew makes a decision. He actually chooses to add 4 women to the genealogy. 4 women in the genealogy, breaking down that tradition. And one of the women is, actually many of the women have complicated pasts, but one of the women he mentions is the person who is the great-grandfather of David, a man named Boaz. And this is what Matthew writes about this man named Boaz. Salmon is the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. He didn't have to include her name. He chose to. I believe it's because Matthew intimately understood the things we're talking about today. Because Matthew had a nickname too. Alexander the Great, Attila the Hun, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Rahab the prostitute, and Matthew another man who had a despised label that he wore. And I think he wants every single reader who ever opens up the gospel to remember the story of Rahab the Canaanite prostitute. Why? To make a label shattering point that men and women with an embarrassing past are not an embarrassment to Jesus Christ. In fact, they are central to the story. Jesus did not come from a perfect family. He came from the world to save the world. And for Matthew and for Rahab and for many of us, those labels, those too smart or not smart or too poor or you're a sinner or you're divorced or you're a failure or you're disqualified or you're an addict or you're too big or you're too small or you can't speak the language or you don't belong here, and all those labels, you have to understand in your mind that that doesn't matter to Jesus at all. That Jesus uses those very same people to accomplish his good plan. In fact, Rahab is such an important character in the Bible that she's included in the list of heroes in Hebrews chapter 11, along with Abraham and Moses and David and all the guys that you have heard of. Right there in the text, it says, by faith, the prostitute Rahab. The author of Hebrews doesn't hide her label. He puts it right next to the word faith, to explain to us the transformative power that having a heart for God has for us. So, we come back to where we started with our labels. The ones from our past. We're weak, we're broken, we're not good enough. We're all those things. And the labels whisper to us that we are disqualified to be used in the kingdom of God. But I think Rahab's story is supposed to shout across millennia that God can overcome whatever it is that we have put in our way of being useful to God. That God can overcome any of the things that we say about ourselves or others have said about us. I'm not smart. Well, you know what? That's fine. God uses the dull to shame the wise in the world. And I'm not strong. Well, that's okay, because God uses the weak to shame the strong. And I'm not attractive enough, and I'm not this enough, and I have a really messy past, and that's fine, because the messier your past, the more beautiful the path of reconciliation to God is. God's grace is not limited by our past, and so what does it mean for us right now? It means that we have to take time to reevaluate for ourselves. We have to think about, what labels have you allowed to define you? Think about them. What labels have you allowed to limit you? What past failures have you convinced yourself make you unusable in the kingdom of God? I think this story demands a reevaluation of those labels, but it also demands a reevaluation of the way we look at other people. We see someone who struggled with addiction, and we go, well, that's not somebody I would really want to trust. It's like, are you sure? Because often those are the type of people God really uses to do great things. It should both make us look at our labels, the ones that are on us, and the labels we put on other people, and realize that the story of Rahab is trying to convince us and remind us that God is a God that takes broken things and makes them absolutely beautiful. That's the goal today. So God didn't just forgive Rahab in spite of her labels. Instead, he gives her something brand new. transforms her a little bit from Rahab the prostitute into Rahab matriarch in the line of Jesus Christ the King. Let's pray.